All right, guys, we're back. Apologies, I was fairly sick last week, so I could not make a video. I thought the last episode was a pretty solid episode, definitely a different perspective. They're basically trying to do like the Game of Thrones books, like POV chapters, where it follows Rhaenyra through the entire episode. I did think the first opening scene was fantastic, though, one of the better scenes I've seen actually in House of the Dragon. But today we're not going to do predictions. We're going to talk more about uh, the current status of where the dragon riders are, the dragons, the armies, and the significant players, and as well as just some general geography to speak, because I do love me some Westerosi geography. So with that being said, let's get into it. Okay, so Team Black Part 1. So we have Rhaenyra, who of course rides Syrax, and she now is officially on the Iron Throne in King's Landing, which is in the Crown Lands. So from last episode, we saw that Rhaenyra was extremely stressed with her new position, rightfully so. She doesn't really have a Queen's Guard, and she doesn't really have a small council because she left. She doesn't trust her small council, so she just left them on Dragonstone, and all of her current Queen's Guard are gone too. So those are two pressing issues. Um, well, simultaneously, it seems like she's definitely made some villains even internally, in terms of Corlys, in terms of Ulf. Uh, Hugh and Adam, as well as the wealthy merchants and lords that she served those rats to in the last episode. So we'll have to see where that goes. But I do think Rhaenyra is struggling and definitely making some enemies here. Then we have Daemon, who of course rides Caraxes and is headed towards the Eyrie in the Vale of Arryn. So remember, Rhaenyra told Daemon to go to the Val to collect money from Jane Eyre, because remember, they don't have any gold basically in King's Landing. Um, Tyland and Otto and Jasper Wilde basically hid it all. They moved it to the Iron Bank of Bravos, which is in Essos. They moved it to Old Town, the seat of House Hightower, and they moved it to Casterly Rock, the seat of House Lannister, and the other 25%, this is in the books, they kept in King's Landing, but they probably burned through all of it. And no one knows where the gold is. So Daemon is going to collect gold from the Eyrie, from Jane Eyre specifically, because basically Rhaenyra is pissed at Jane in a sense because she hasn't really done anything. Like she hasn't sent any troops. They've been kind of out of the conflict, even though she said she would side with Rhaenyra. But again, Rhaenyra did say she'd give her a dragon, and instead she kind of just gave her a baby Tyraxes and a baby Stormcloud. So there's definitely some tension between Rhaenyra and Jane. So Daemon is headed to the Eyrie. So part two, we got Hugh the Hammer and Ulf the White, who respectively ride Vermithor and Silverwing. Vermithor and Silverwing were actually, remember, the dragons of the old King Jaehaerys and his wife Alysanne, the greatest rulers in the Targaryen dynasty. Excuse me. And they're pretty large dragons. They're a force to be reckoned with, and that's why it's a little confusing why Rhaenyra almost seems to be somewhat intentionally pissing them off. I mean, they're just straight up disrespectful to Ulf, which I kind of respect. And Hugh is like, I need a house now for like my wife. Like, what's going on here? And Rhaenyra doesn't seem that concerned by it right now. Obviously, she has a lot of other concerns and issues, but doesn't seem that worried about it in the moment. They're both in King's Landing. Their dragons are probably in the dragon pit in King's Landing. But remember, Ormond Hightower just took over Tumbleton in the Reach, which is just southwest of King's Landing, probably like 50 to 100 miles away from King's Landing. So she could send these two dragon riders and these two dragons to Tumbleton in the next episode. We'll have to see where that goes. Okay, so we here have Adam of Hull and Baela Targaryen. Adam, like Ulf and Hugh, seem fairly disrespected because remember, Corlys wanted Adam and Alan to be named Valerion, and he admitted that they're his bastards. But once a queen can basically make you unbastardized. Probably a better term for that, but she didn't because she thinks it's a political concern of hers, even though it is fairly hypocritical because her children and Joffrey is going to be the next king right now of Westeros. They're all clearly bastards, so it does seem fairly hypocritical, and I do understand why Corlys is extremely frustrated. Of course, he rides Sea Smoke, and they are still in King's Landing in the Crown Lands. And we'll have to see. I think like Ulf and Hugh, he could be sent to Tumbleton in the Reach to fight the Greens in Tumbleton. But again, we'll see where that goes. With Bela, she rides Moondancer. Fun fact: Moondancer was hatched by Vagar, and I think that makes sense because in the show they made Moondancer look a lot like Vagar. From my understanding, she's on Dragonstone, which is in the Crown Lands, and that's because I think that Bela we saw in the last episode was just Rhaenyra imagining Bela, like how she imagined Jace, and she's just having these like she's going fairly crazy because she's not sleeping, she's under a ton of stress. So I think Bela right now is currently on Dragonstone, and in terms of books, I'm not going to spoil anything. Right now, that would make sense if she was on Dragonstone. So again, we'll have to see what's up with Bela and Moondancer. But moving on. Okay, so we have the last part of Team Black. I called it kinda. That's because these are either extremely small dragons that really can't do much, and in terms of Rhaena Targaryen, who rides Sheepstealer, who is currently in the Val of Arryn, I don't think Rhaenyra will be too happy, to be friends or friendly with Rhaena, knowing that Rhaena was kind of the reason Jace died indirectly. So we'll have to see where that goes. Remember, Daemon is going to the Val of Arryn to meet with Lady Jane Arryn. So we'll have to see the relationship that will probably, I think, certainly be built between Rhaena and once Daemon finds out that Rhaena has a big dragon, and Sheepstealer's a big dragon. He's like 80, 90 years old at this point. He's formidable. And I think Rhaena and Daemon will have a whole plot line. I don't know exactly how that'll work out, but there's going to be a Daemon Rhaena plot line. And remember, Rhaena is a daughter of Daemon. So Joffrey Valerian slash Targaryen, because technically now Joffrey is the heir to the throne, the youngest son of Rhaenyra and Laenor, but really Harwin Strong. Again, he's the heir. He rides a small dragon, Tyraxes. I'd assume they would probably have ridden now together in somewhere in the Eyrie, just off camera. We have not seen Tyraxes, but Tyraxes is described as a pink dragon. And he is specifically in the Eyrie, and he's being sent back to King's Landing on Rhaenyra's orders that she gave to Luther Largent in the last episode. A notable mention is Aegon the Younger, the eldest son of Daemon and Rhaenyra, who rides Stormcloud, who's an adorable little dragon that we saw in later season two. In the books, their plot line is totally different. Basically, in the books, Aegon uh, rides off with Stormcloud after the Tyroshi attack their boat with his younger brother Viserys is also there, who we've seen in the show. And he escapes on Stormcloud, and he tells Jace and Rhaenyra like the Triarchy are attacking, and that's how Jace and all the dragons go to attack the Triarchy. But in the show, we haven't even heard mention of Viserys and Aegon and Stormcloud. So I don't even know if they're in the Eyrie or Pentos. They might be in Pentos and Essos, which we see Pentos in season one of Game of Thrones, where Dany and Viserys is. But yeah, I don't really know what they're doing with this plot line, so I'm not even going to attempt to make any predictions. But that summarizes Team Black in terms of the dragons and dragon riders. But in terms of the final Team Black geography summary, so their locations for the dragon riders and dragons are basically just in the Crownlands and the Vale of Arryn. But Team Black controlled kingdoms is most of the Crown Lands. There's some castles in the Crown Lands that are still for Team Green. Of course, the Riverlands. Even though Aemond is there on Vagar, the Riverlands, all the houses are sworn to Rhaenyra and Daemon. The Val of Arryn is technically sworn to Rhaenyra, even though they haven't really played a part um, in this uh, war, and that's why Rhaenyra is so upset at Jane, and that's why she's sending Daemon to go there and like collect gold from her. And then the North, which Craig and Stark, Roddy Dustin, and all the Northmen. So those are the 3.75 kingdoms that are on the side of Team Black, Rhaenyra, and Daemon right now. So let's go on to Team Green. So Team Green. So of course they have less dragons, but they also have the biggest dragon by far, which is Vagar. So Aegon Targaryen II, he is badly wounded as well as his dragon Sunfire. It does sound like in the show that Sunfire is dead, but I'm kind of refusing to believe that. It just wouldn't make sense. And if you watch Game of Thrones, they kind of spoil what happens at the end of the Dance of the Dragons and House of the Dragon. I'm not going to say anything, but Joffrey does spoil it in season 3 of Game of Thrones. So I do not think Sunfire is dead. Let me put it that way. I think it is possible that Aegon finds Sunfire in this episode and he's alive still. Because remember, Aegon and Larys are headed to Rook's Rest in the Crown Lands because Aegon thinks Kristen is still there, even though Kristen is at Harrenhal meeting up with Aemond and Vhagar. So we will see if Aegon and Sunfire reunite in this episode. I'm hoping they do, but we will see. And again, Aegon is headed towards Rook's Rest. Then, of course, Aemond, who we saw at the end of season 3, episode 2, excuse me, again, was badly wounded by one of Sir Strong's sons, and then he meets Alice Rivers, and Vagar's there at Harrenhal, burning stuff up. And again, the Riverlands is on Rhaenyra's side, but Aemond and Kristen are trying to create a stronghold there to retake the Riverlands. So we'll have to see how the relationship between Alice Rivers and Aemond builds. I think we'll see something with that plot line this episode. Okay, Team Green Part 2. So we have Darren Targaryen on the left. I'm not sure if that's even Darren. I think it is, and they're changing it from the book. So in the books, Darren has the Targaryen traditional hair, but I think in the show, he actually got Alicent's hair, like that auburn red hair, which is, possible according to genetics. So he rides to Serion, who's like my favorite looking dragon. And she's a she dragon. She did that like funny like take where she's like, yeah, that's definitely not Darren. I don't know if anyone's seen those memes, but they're pretty funny. They currently just took over a Rhaenyra-sided castle, Tumbleton, which we mentioned a few times, with Ormond Hightower, because they kind of tricked Rhaenyra and gave her a fake Darren. So now they have the castle Tumbleton, which you can see on the map is just southwest of King's Landing. It's pretty dang close. So at this point, the Reach is fully controlled by the Greens, Darren and Tessarion. Of course, we have Helena, and we've only seen Dreamfire once. That was in season 1, episode 6, when young Aemond goes down to the dragon pit to try and claim a dragon. Then Dreamfire freaks out. Dreamfire was actually originally written by another Rhaena Targaryen who was the eldest sister of the old king Jaehaerys. So Dreamfire is actually a very big dragon. She's around 100 years old at this time, and she is currently in King's Landing with Helena at the dragon pit. One thing that doesn't really make sense is like, why didn't like Helena, Jaehaera, and Alicent escape to the dragon pit and just ride off on Dreamfire? She's like a huge dragon, and they could have gotten out. Because in the books, it said that like Helena loves riding Dreamfire, but like we haven't seen them. We have only seen Dreamfire once, and it was by herself without Helena. So I do think that change is a little awkward and weird, but hopefully we get to see Dreamfire this season with Helena. But that again summarizes the Dragon Riders 14 green. They have significantly less dragons, but again, they do have Vagar. So let's move on to the final part, which is the Team Green geography summary. So their Dragon Riders and their Dragons locations are in the Crown Lands, the Riverlands, and the Reach. So basically, all the dragons at this point are either in the Crown Lands, the Riverlands, the Reach, or the Vale of Arryn, which is all like basically the closest kingdoms to King's Landing. Besides, I guess, the Stormlands. Again, the Stormlands, which is a controlled kingdom technically. Remember, Lord Baratheon made an agreement with Aemond at the end of season 1 before he killed Luke, that he would side with them, but Aemond would have to marry one of his daughters, which we haven't really heard anything about the Stormlands or the Baratheons since then, but technically they are on Team Green as of now. The entire Reach should be controlled by the Greens at this point, as well as the Westerlands is still on Team Green's side. In the books, there's some conflict now between the Iron Islands and the Westerlands, so it's potentially possible we see the Iron Island side with Rhaenyra in this episode and attack the Westerlands on their coasts, which would be cool because Dalton Greyjoy, an ancestor of Theon, is a pretty cool character. They call him the Red Kraken. And they do control a bit of the Crown lands. There's some castles there that I think are still loyal to the Green, such as House Darkland of Duskendale, and maybe some smaller houses such as House Thorn, like Rickard Thorn, the Kingsguard, and oh my gosh, that's embarrassing. The Thorn in Game of Thrones. I can not. That is embarrassing. But the guy that's always beefing with Jon Snow, their castle is also definitely on Team Green, and it is in the Crownlands. So, with that being said, that pretty much covers. It's a pretty high level, quick check in um, on Teams Black and Team Green's Dragon Riders, where the armies are at, where the significant players are at, what everyone's up to in terms of just the geography. I thought it was important because I do think the geography plays a pretty important role in all of these significant wars in Westeros. But that's pretty much all I have today. I'll probably get back to the prediction content next week, but I did want to do this check-in so everyone knows what's going on, at least at a high level. Please like and subscribe if you can. I really appreciate everyone watching the video. Thank you and see you next week.